Welcome back to the End of the Day show. I am your host, Matt Parker. Two topics today that I wanted to discuss on the show. One relates to someone I spoke about on a previous show and being in the news for other things besides his personal life, but actually being in the news for some work culture quotes he made that he actually retracted today. So he's already backtracked on what he said. And another billionaire who made some statements on a podcast or Breakfast Club show yesterday, then he actually made some retracted statements on as well. So I want to get into that, give my commentary on it here briefly on the End of the Day show. Let's get into it. So the first person that I wanted to talk about today that's made some statements that have went pretty crazy on Twitter. If you're like me and you're still on X, you see in, my feed, these statements were really interesting. Got a lot of people in tiffies. So this person that I'm talking about is Eric Schmidt. I talked about Eric Schmidt a few weeks ago when one of his, now I guess, former mistresses or girlfriends or whatever his relationship situation is, he essentially she's basically run out of money for a venture that he funded, and the information did a big piece on it. This week, he's in the news for talking about his ex-company. So Eric Schmidt, who is the ex-Google CEO, notorious for running Google during a very successful time, obviously, with our condolences. I shared on this show about the passing of Susan Wojcicki, who was the actually CEO at YouTube. Eric Schmidt was the CEO of Google during that time, and he sparked some controversy when he made these statements on yesterday.
Google decided that work-life balance and going home early and working from home was more important than winning. And the reason startups work is because the people work like hell. And I'm sorry to be so blunt, but the fact of the matter is, if you all leave the university and go found a company, you're not going to let people work from home and only come in one day a week if you want.
So these statements he made, take it for what you have. My belief is that these are actually the way that this is actually the way most wealthy, successful people in Silicon Valley think right now. Many of them just don't have the time or care enough to say it, but he obviously said it very bluntly at Stanford, and that is that most companies like Google have a culture where people aren't working that hard, and work-life balance has become a very large part of the conversation. But the biggest thing, and the reason I'm talking about this story, is I do feel in a way like that's how everybody feels. And I can attest from my position, myself, my small piece of this is, yes, if you're a startup founder, working from home is not good for you. It's not good for your company. It's not good for you intellectually. It's not good for you socially, right? Now, my life has changed drastically since the pandemic, when work from home was mandated in most states. If you live in San Francisco, California, like me, it was mandated for quite a bit of time, and most companies had to allow their employees to work from home indefinitely. Many of those conversations now are different. Salesforce announced that in October, everybody's back in the office 4 days a week. And many other companies are making these statements as well at the top, and this has already trickled down. If you're a startup founder, no one's doing remote first companies. No one's even doing remote only companies. Most companies that I know that are startups that are in the seed, pre-seed, Series A stage are requiring 4 to 5 days in office work. The world of work from home has come to an end. Layoffs are continuing to be increased. And my theory is this. Hey, this may be conspiracy theory. I think all these large companies that are laying these people off, we just saw Cisco again announce another 6,000 people that they laid off. It's one simple reason they're laying these people off. I mean, Cisco's still very profitable. Like, their revenue might be down, but they're still a profitable business. The key for them is to cut people who aren't working in offices and aren't working in physical locations. That's just the facts. These companies are able now to do it And if you've been working from home for 4 years or 3 years, they're just going to lay you off. It's easy. It's an easy thing for them to do. They get smaller. Their stocks get a pop if they're public companies. If they're private companies, they're probably able to appease to their investors when they're trying to raise new rounds of funding. And although Eric Schmidt made these statements, he quickly backtracked these statements, and in a Fortune article stated that he was not so, he basically said, like, I really didn't mean that. I was kind of, that rant was kind of inefficient. He essentially says, I misspoke about Google and their work hours. I regret my error. He kept it at that. Somebody called him and said, hey, Eric, you've made, over $30 billion working at Google. You're incentivized for Google to do well. You might want to take those statements back. But he made this at Stanford University. It got 40,000 views as of Wednesday afternoon, and it was taken down. In the video, Schmidt claimed that Google has lost the lead in AI to startups like OpenAI and Anthropic because of its stance on working from home. He was being straight up and honest, and that's what most people are feeling right now. Everybody thinks that people should be back in the office 4 to 5 days a week. And it's just going to continue. These large companies are seeing their stocks pop when they lay people off. They're going to continue to lay more people off to cut down on the amount of people that can work from home. And I think work from home won't be around in 2025. If you're a company, you're not going to hire people that can't come into your office. And I know it's difficult because life changes. Obviously, life has changed for me drastically in the past 2 to 3 years. I've had 2 kids. I've gotten married. I've gotten comfortable in my lifestyle and going to pick up kids. I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday. 3 hours a day, he's commuting to work 2 days a week. But at the end of the day, he even thinks it's better. It's a better situation for him. It's a better situation for his company, and he's more productive. So the work from home crowd has to stop. It's over. If you want to work from home, at least in tech, you're going to have to find new things and new companies to do all the time because these companies are going against the grain and they're basically mandating returns to office. So I actually give a shout out to Eric Schmidt for making these statements. I don't like the fact that he didn't stand on business and he actually quickly apologized and retracted his statements almost as quickly as he made them. Transitioning into another story, another billionaire who made some statements that he quickly retracted is Michael Rubin. Yes, Michael Rubin, known for his illustrious 4th of July holiday party, as well as being the founder, CEO of Fanatics, which is a $30 to $40 billion private company. I would love to see some financials on Fanatics. It's still a company to me that boggles my mind that they're worth that much money in the e-commerce space. But Michael Rubin made these statements on the Breakfast Club yesterday, and they were quite interesting.
The thing I don't like about that is it doesn't bother me for me. It bothers me that it actually, when I see the narrative of a really good friend of mine like Meek, and people trying to, again, if he was gay, which there's not one gay bone in his body, who cares? Number one, let's say if people want to be gay, it is 2024. Who the fuck cares? Okay. Number two, there's not a gay bone in his body. So like, why do people want to lie about that? Why do people want to change a narrative, a bet he made with me to try to hurt him? Like, that is the one thing I've learned about, look, I'm just being blunt because it's me. It's the one thing I've learned about black culture that I don't like is that black hate on hate.
Speak on that more. I heard you say that earlier, and I wanted you to expound on that. You said you don't like to see black people tearing down other black people.
Yeah, it's horrible. Like, it's horrible. Like, why? Like, I want to support look, you guys
here is basically claiming that, he's around black culture a lot. He's really good friends with Meek Mill. He's really good friends with all the artists and entertainers and athletes. Just, generally by design because he has to be, because Fanatics is in the sports and entertainment business. But he made these statements about the black culture, and I was very, intrigued by these statements, right? Being a black person, black man in Silicon Valley, you do wonder why do we see so much dissension when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to sports, when it comes to seeing all day long, a lot of times what are other black people on TV tearing down other black people, whether they're on the field or they're on the court, whether they're in this recording studio. It's been a lot of beef this year, more than normal. And a lot of it is impacting people that are black in positions where they have a platform. Michael Rubin is unique because he's a Jewish guy from Pennsylvania. So the question is, like, what does he have to say about Black culture? Well, I think that his statement is something that a lot of people agreed with. But again, Michael Rubin quickly retracted his statements and posted to X that he got a call from one of the people that he has the most respect for in the world. They told me, while they appreciate my intention, it's not my place to speak on Black culture. I get it, and I really appreciate the input. My intention was to say how important it is to uplift each other, stop the hate on each other, and push each other to win, and always root for each other's success. My bad. Much love and appreciation. The feedback on the Breakfast Club. DJ MVC, the guy, got about 1 million views in only a couple hours, and the comments are probably crazy, so I'll spare you that. But I think it's interesting that he would retract these statements so quickly because, again, as I talked about with Eric Schmidt, powerful people, in this point, wealthy, powerful people who are white or Jewish and have a lot of sway, this is how they feel. Now that he's retracting these statements, to me, the retraction doesn't mean anything, right? It's one of the reasons Donald Trump has been able to leverage his brand again to be up again for president, because Donald Trump doesn't apologize. He speaks to a specific base, he communicates to that base, and he doesn't, change on that base. Yes, he lies. Yes, he says outlandish things all the time, but you never see him retract his statements. And we're coming out of a time where a lot of these billionaires and successful people have been a lot more outspoken on things. And I think this was Michael Rubin's attempt to say something meaningful, right? Again, he does a lot in the social justice warrior corner of the world to help. But really, Michael Rubin he's a business owner. He's a billionaire. He wants to fight for fanatics, and he knows that these artists, these athletes, these entertainers, these successful Black people that he's around give him leverage in that space. He gets cultural cachet from them. But him here saying what he feels about the Black culture is actually a real point. Why do Black people generally practice a homophobia around people that aren't even outwardly gay, like Meek Mill? So I do wonder at times, can't we all just say what we feel and accept it? Or do we have to retract statements? Do we have to pull back the curtain on what we really feel like and then have to cover it back up once we get bad expression? How does this all relate to what I do and what this podcast is about? Well, it does, because I think there's a general consensus that a lot of white people of, in power, predominantly white men, have the keys to a lot of the economic prosperity in America, whether that's in venture capital, private equity, or just in general. A lot of these people sway power. They have money. And in many cases, a lot of the up and coming people of color in this country need to actually have relationships there, need to build relationships to get to that point. And when we can't say things like work from home is bullshit, or the Black culture doesn't treat its own Black people well, and we shoot the messenger and we get offended, I think it actually hurts, because now these people aren't going to say these things, and we're not going to actually get the truth, which is what you want. And what you want is the truth and the reality. So that's all for the end of the day show. I wanted to cover those two topics. Make sure to check us out for insights on YouTube, the Stretch4.substack newsletter. I think this was a good commentary, good story. Let me know if you like these types of stories versus some of the traditional stuff. Hope you all are having a great day. I'm Matt Parker. That's all for today.